For the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And with that, we call this regular meeting of the Houston County Board to order. First item of business is the approval of the agenda, with a notation here that there's two additional items that we would like to add to the agenda in the consent agenda. One is the hiring of Heidi Lapham as a probationary deputy auditor treasurer license center clerk, a B-22 step 4 effective 12/14, conditioned upon a successful background check. And the other is in the sheriff's office, assigning Patrick Mulling as a probationary lead jailer dispatcher B-32 effective December 6th, and approving and initiating a competitive search for a jailer dispatcher. Heidi comes with experience because she was in the La Crescent license office, so training is not a necessity. She's familiar with everything and has the experience.
And I think that Tess sent an email that she did pass the background checks also.
Okay, I guess I didn't see that. But.
Yeah.
So those three items to be added to the consent agenda.
Consent.
Well, we're just approving the agenda right now as
Right now,
Right.
but the agenda would be added to the agenda, those three things. Added to the consent agenda.
3 or 2?
3. Heidi Lapham, Patrick Mulling, and a competitive search for a jailer dispatcher.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with those additions.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item is the approval of previous minutes. The first being the board meeting November 9th of 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from November 9th.
Motion made and seconded to approve the board meeting minutes from November 9th. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Sorry, Eric, I cut you off. Motion carried. Second is the approval of the previous minutes from the work group session of November the 16th, 2021.
Moved. Go ahead. I'll second it then.
Greg made the motion, Dewey seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'll try and slow down for you, Eric, so I don't keep cutting you off.
Well, I'll try to say it early so it gets there.
No, that's okay. Next item of business is public comment. For anybody that wants to come forward and make a public comment, please come forward.
Hi, everyone. My name is Liz Gibson-Gassay. I am the library director at the Houston Public Library, and today I am here representing the 5 Houston County Public Libraries. Recently, we became aware that some members of your board are on the fence about signing the proposed 1-year contract that we currently have negotiated with Bob and Teresa, who represented your board on the negotiating committee. I served on that committee along with our executive director from Selco, the regional cooperative, Krista Ross, and 2 other library directors, Casey Gentry from La Crescent and Kirsten Plummer from Hoka. I'm here to hopefully address some of those concerns. I know that Bob has probably talked to you about where the monies would come from, but I am here to talk about the process that we went through to reach this compromise. and also some of the data and history that I think gets lost every time there's a turnover, either among the directors or among your board. So I have been the director for 20 years in Houston, and during that period, every time our contract comes up for renewal, which is traditionally every 2 to 3 years, we come before you, we present statistics that we're required to by our contract about our programming, our computer usage, our attendance levels, et cetera. And then we also talk about, the many wonderful things that we try to do on what we consider a shoestring budget. And we also reiterate every single year that there is a serious inequity on how our libraries are funded in this county. And just to backtrack, and the libraries receive funding from the residents of the 5 cities that host those libraries. So that would be Caledonia, Spring Grove, Hoka, Houston, and the Crescent. And then everyone who does not live in one of those 5 cities is considered to be taken care of under your wing through county funding. And every time this contract comes up, we come back to you with statistics that show this inequity. The most recent ones that I pulled together last night as I decided to come to this meeting and talk to you are from 2019. At that time, the average per capita support from a resident of Caledonia local public libraries was $27.49. From La Crescent, it was $29.76. From Hoka, it was $34.08. From Houston, $39.92. And from Spring Grove, $80.03. In comparison, if you live outside of those 5 cities in Houston County, your average per capita support in 2020 was $20.63. So every year we come to you and we say, what this translates into is that every single Houston County resident who walks into the door of one of our 5 libraries receives the same service, but they do not equally share the costs of funding these libraries depending on where they live. And this places an unfair financial burden on the residents, the Houston County residents, who you represent as well, even though they live in one of those 5 cities. In addition, it places the libraries in the position of struggling to make ends meet as we try to provide expected library services, both the old traditional things like checking out books and movies, but the new things that have come along in the 20 years that I have been working for you, such as Wi-Fi and digital audiobooks and more programming and STEM kits. So every year we talk about if those residents who don't live in the 5 cities paid an equal share towards supporting the libraries, we would have a budget that would allow us to do more things to raise salaries, to address a lot of issues that I will get into a little later here. And we, you can calculate it out as you want. You can take the low end of Caledonia, multiply it out by the 8,000 residents, and come up with an additional $52,000. You can go on the high end and take Spring Grove, and you'd have an additional $474,000 for us. Anywhere in there, we can see that we're not receiving equal funding from the county. So we've worked on this for a long time, but for 20 years, I've been singing the same song. And we come away with small increases that do not address this problem. And at a meeting a few years ago, it was back in March of 2020, Bob actually suggested that we try to come at this, instead of presenting the same old information, present it in a new way, sort of with a new narrative. And he asked us to really sit down and look at our collective budgets and analyze them line by line and see where this was hurting us most. What services we were not able to provide or not able to provide well, and where this money would actually make an impact. So we did. We rose to the occasion. We created a very detailed survey that the 5 library directors filled out. We talked about how many hours the libraries are open to the public, how many employee hours that requires to service them. We looked at wages. We looked at the years of service that were attached to those wages. We looked at the number of computers that we offer to the public, the ages of those computers, the cost to replace them. We looked at our book budgets, our movie budgets. We looked at our programming budgets, and we looked at the new things that we offer that have come to us over the course of the last few years, such as Wi-Fi, digital books, et cetera, that are costing us, that we've never really adequately caught up with in terms of our revenue to pay for those new expenditures. And so as a group, we sat down and we really identified 3 major areas and presented them back to the commissioners. Technology was the number 1. And I know I'm going into quite a bit of detail, but I really do feel like if you're on the fence, it's because you don't have the information you need. Because I can't believe you do not care about these problems. So I'm going to take some time here to go over some of this information. In computers, what we found is we have 35 public access computers in our 5 locations and 14 staff computers. And the directors decided that the numbers were adequate. What it really came down to was that they were old and lacked the power for modern usage. 20 of the computers, the public access computers, were over 5 years old, and 10 of them were between 8 and 10 years of age. None of the libraries, except, well, one of the libraries had a computer replacement program guaranteeing that new computers were coming into their libraries. The rest of us do not have funds in our budget to do that. Selco also offers many different programs to the libraries in our cooperative, ranging from PC support to PC management, a program that actually allows you to buy into a regular replacement of your computers. None of us can afford to use those services. We all would like people counters to keep more accurate track of the numbers of people coming into our building. In addition, we have technology fees for the cost of running our computers, our CERC programs, et cetera. In my own library, those fees have gone up 85% in the last 5 years. In La Crescent, I think from 2015 to 2019, they also went up about 65%. Our budgets are not following the things that are happening to us as we try to provide services to our patrons. And so we attached dollar amounts to these problems, and we looked at a low end and a high end, saying if we wanted to address the most dire of these circumstances, replace the oldest computers, et cetera, help the libraries that are struggling the most subscribe to some of these programs, how much would it cost? If we wanted to solve all of these technological issues, how much would it cost? And we came up with ranges. We did the same thing for collection development. According to the American Library Association, the average library should be spending about 10 to 20% of their average budget on new materials for patrons to check out. None of our libraries come close to that. In fact, only one of the libraries here is able to purchase 100% of their collection development out of their own budget. The rest of us rely on grants and our friends groups to raise the money so that we can buy books and movies for the library, which is one of the most essential services that we provide. I do not know another city or county department that has to host bake sales and book sales and quilt raffles and basket raffles so they can go out, I don't know, and pave a road. It's a little unheard of, and yet this becomes expected of us. It wouldn't be if we had the adequate funding coming back from the county to support what we do. So we also attached a high and low end to that, to look at the most dire needs within collection development at some of the smaller libraries in particular, and then a higher end budget for that as well, if we address everybody's concerns and everybody's needs. The final issue was personnel, and there were 2 parts to this. One was additional staff time. When this was done back in March of 2020, many of the libraries commented that they would like to have more hours to be available to their patrons, night hours, weekend hours, and provide a greater variety. I think with COVID, we have backed off from that request, but we still look at the fair and competitive wage issue. When this survey was done, there were 2 full-time employees among the 5 libraries and 15 part-time employees, again, in 5 separate locations. We were open to the public 212 hours per week total as a group. And the wages for the directors at this time ranged between $15.45 an hour and $24.50 an hour. For the record, I've worked for you for 21 years. I make $21 an hour. I do not think this is something that we see here at the courthouse. Yes, we're not actually county employees, but we serve only county residents. It is a struggle for our cities who cannot give us any more money because their per capita costs are so high. This has to come from you or we'll never be able to address these issues. On the low end, I mean, for employee wages, they range between $8.70 an hour and $14.85 an hour. This was back in March of 2020, when we were looking already at wages being a huge issue in trying to allow us to hire and retain competitive staff. It has only gotten worse, as we all know, the effects that COVID has had on the employment world. And for example, I will say that in Spring Grove, when Dawn Johnson retired in July, she was replaced internally by an employee there, Jana Hollingsworth. They have not been able to replace her internally. I don't think they've even had many inquiries to finding somebody for that job because of the hours we're offering, the very limited hours we're able to offer, and also the very low wages we're able to offer. At my own library, my assistant has been there for 7 years. She earns $14.06 an hour. She could walk into Quick Trip and get a job. We all know at $20 an hour now. It is a very difficult and very consuming problem for us as we continue to navigate our way through the current world. So all in all, those were our three major issues. And when we looked at the request, the low end, when we added up those three categories, it was an additional $70,000 we would be looking at to address the most major of the shortcomings in our budgets. And on the high end, it was $162,000. Currently, our contract is $165,877. So it effectively double our budget. However, if you look back at what I referred to earlier, the contributions coming from the county versus the contributions coming from the city, you know, if the Houston County city per capita average were used by you as the standard, you would be giving us an additional $167,000. The problem would be solved. Now, did we? No, we did not. We worked in small committee with Teresa and Bob. We outlined all this. We went, I mean, we've been working on this for 2 years now, 2 years. We have looked at all this data. We have gone over the problems. We asked, the librarians asked for a $40,000 increase, and we compromised working with Bob and Teresa on a $20,000 increase. Now, $20,000, I guess you can say it's a lot of money, and yes, it is, and no, it's not. It is a drop in the water when it comes to solving the issues we're having at the libraries so that we continue to provide service for people in Houston County. Because we're not just talking about shortchanging libraries. What we're really shortchanging is the citizens of Houston County who depend on us for computers when theirs don't work, or because they don't have one, or because they don't have a printer, or because they need to fill out job applications online and only have their telephone to access the internet. We're talking about families who come for story time programming and summer reading and the books they need so their kids can do their Redo assignments at school. We're talking about engaging, entertaining, and educating the population of Houston County. So when we're talking about this, we're not just talking about shortchanging libraries, we're talking about shortchanging the residents of this county. There are a couple ways you can look at that. $20,000, yes, it's a lot. Compared to what we need, it's nothing. Compared to your budget, it's nothing. At the same time, you know, I look at that and I say, well, 8,000 individuals, $20,000, that's not even a cup of coffee at the Wired Rooster per person. It's nothing. Recently, this summer, I was reading in the newspaper that you all approved a $19,000 purchase for desks and chairs for the highway department. Now, to September 28th meeting, you actually paid for that, and it was $11,716. But I look at chairs and desks for a department full of people who are supposed to be out working and improving the roads versus a $20,000 increase that serves 5 locations. And you know what we're talking about here, this money is going to, yes, books and movies and audiobooks and magazine subscriptions and newspaper subscriptions. It's going to computers and tablets and Chromebooks and the licenses that go with it. It's going to Wi-Fi and digital audiobooks and ebooks. It's going to classes and programming and author events. It's going to STEM kits and make and take kits, story time and home kits. It's going to story times and summer reading programs and story walks, interlibrary loan, the technology we need for our CERT programs. It's going to faxes and scanners and copiers. And most of all, it's going to the library employees who make all this happen for the residents. At 5 separate locations where buildings need maintenance and snow removal and auditing and electricity and sewers and blah, blah, blah. So what is $20,000 divided that way? It would make a tremendous difference for us as libraries directors to address some of our most urgent problems. But this is an ongoing issue. Again, I've been singing this song for 20 years, and I feel like Bob and Teresa really heard us for the first time and really saw this information and saw that people are working for $8 an hour under our auspices. And they felt like this $20,000 request was justifiable, it was reasonable, it was manageable for you. And I am, I feel like we've got Bob and Teresa on board. So I'm looking at you, Greg, and I'm looking at you, Dewey, and I'm looking up there at you, Eric. I feel like you need to do the right thing and sign this contract. We're very late in the year. We finished working on this, I believe, in June or July, maybe. We've already turned our budgets in for 2022 to our cities. We do that in August. We've already planned out how we're going to use this money. It is late to go back to the drawing board. It is not impossible, but what it requires is us is getting back to small committees, hammering this stuff out. Time is money. Every hour I spend working on this, I am not looking for outside grant money. I am not running a program for kids. I am not cleaning toilets or covering books or vacuuming or doing any of the other multitude of things I do at my library. So in short, I know I'm taking up a bit of time here, but I'm happy to answer questions that you might have. I do feel like you've been given all this information. Bob and Teresa have it. I'll be happy to give you my email if you need anything else. But it is important that this get resolved quickly so we know what we're dealing with for 2022. And at a certain point, I do think that the three of you need to listen to the group that worked on your behalf on this negotiating committee and considered all this information and evaluated it all. And I think you need to take their recommendation. I hear from people that maybe you feel like libraries aren't important because not everybody uses them. Well, not everybody has children that goes to school. They still pay to support the schools. Not everybody drives. They still pay to support roads. Not everybody's going to cross the new bridge in Freeburg. They still pay to support it. That is what we call the social contract, which is providing services to people within our community. And I think this extra $20,000 added on to the $165,877 we already have is a reasonable and inadequate in many ways some. I look at the highest paid people here in Houston County. I think it used to be maybe your county administrator, but now it's probably your head of HR and your county attorney. Their two salaries added together, not including their benefits, is more than you give to the 5 libraries altogether. We are trying to pay for library services, library staff, and the maintenance of our buildings, all to serve Houston County residents. So I don't know what kind of questions you can come up with for me here. I'm happy to answer them, but I really feel like we have done our best as a group to come up with a solution that everybody can live with. And I'm a little mystified by reluctance to sign it. Questions?
Have there been any approach to the different townships in the bailiwick or not?
Approach to them by whom?
Yeah, to them just adding on their budgets to help
Bob,
it.
you would be able to address that better than I. that goes to how the money,
But I mean, going directly to each town board and saying, well, you know, you have X number of
you know, that
residents.
is, I would say that is not necessarily our job. That is more your job as the county board to be talking to them, because you're the ones who figure out where the funding comes from. We're just showing you what we need that money for. Does that make sense? Bob, can you address that?
The townships on Brownsville and Eitzen is part of the county levy. The townships don't individually pay.
They come to
The
us.
two little cities don't pay. So it's through the county levy, and I didn't explain that properly earlier, I guess.
No, that makes sense now with the two pieces of
But
information.
I met with the town, the Houston County Township president, you know, their board,
Association, yep.
and talked about it, as well as the clerk from Eitzen and Brownsville. We talked about the $40,000 request and wouldn't be able to substantially fund that, but 20,000 was a reasonable number that we negotiated and felt was a fair number and provide some of the need on a one-year contract. So
1 year.
that was at that meeting. Now, maybe I didn't explain it properly to the township guys as far as how it worked, because they thought it was going to be a levy against each township would have to come up with it instead of the county levy. But it's always been a county levy. It's never been individual townships.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're much more qualified to answer
No.
that level of questioning than I am.
This actually isn't, this is a county appropriation, correct?
Right.
This isn't, it goes against the levy, right? I understand that, but this is a county appropriation. Just like we appropriate money to the Historical Society, the Ag Society, and so on. So I think
Sorry.
I think what's happened here is Liz, from what I gathered from what Liz was saying, that she's already been told that this is a done deal and the contracts are signed and.
No, I didn't actually say that, but I said it's very late in the year for us to change the course that we came to at the end of.
Well, it
January.
sounded like in your statements that this was actually it's something that's been worked out and agreed upon.
By the negotiating committee.
Right, and see, there hasn't been nothing coming back in our defense as a whole board of what was discussed and what the outcome was. It came back as we found out through the budget process that this is going to be a $20,000 one-year contract. And one of my questions were, we usually do a 2 or 3 year contract with you. And
That's true. Since COVID hit, we have reduced down to doing a 1 year contract, mostly because in 2020, we were all looking at and wondering if there would be LGA cuts coming to the cities and to the county. So instead of committing to a longer contract at that time, we all agreed to sit down and look at what the long-term effects were going to be on the economic situation within the county. And this contract, we decided to do a $20,000 1 year increase because it was so dramatic. We didn't want to, we were just trying to work on solving some immediate problems. We'll go back to the table. We have to go back to the table again in the new year to start working on a 2023 budget. It would be my hope that we could come to a 2 or 3 year contract at that time. But that is one of the things we negotiate between the commissioners who represent you and the librarians who represents the 5 libraries. So nothing's set in stone on that account.
I recall it during this a few months ago that the 40,000 was discussed, and then we came down to the compromise of 20, which I have no qualm with. Personally, I see it's a benefit, and there has been some give and take, you know, and I understand the costs thereof. I represent La Crescent City, and of course they have their own levy and all that for the library, but I can agree with that $20,000 myself. I have no problem with that, and
Well,
be
I'm
ready
glad
to
to
look
hear that.
forward to the future is what I'm thinking.
I'm glad to hear that because that would.
And I don't have a qualm with the 20,000 either. I was just wanting to see it in a 3-year contract, spread it out the 3-year contract.
Except spreading out that $20,000, we go back to my original point that we've been talking about these inequities for 20 years now, and every time we come back to the $3,000 increase or $2,000 increase, meanwhile, costs keep going up, new services keep getting, and we never catch up. We need some big input from the county so that we bring these levels of support, the per capita averages for the cities and the county, though, and by county, we mean anybody who lives not in those 5 cities. They need to be more equitable. It is not fair to the people of the cities to be paying 2 to 4 times higher for library support than the other residents of this county. It's not fair to them, and it's not fair to us when we're trying to provide equal service for everyone, and when we're required to have new services every year to meet needs, and we can't do that. So we need some big input. We need some big capital input from the county to equalize this funding problem. And $20,000, let me say one more time, chairs and desks.
Yeah, I get the comparisons, I get that. But from a board's point of view, we like to plan our budgets. We got to know what we're going to have every year, and by doing 1-year contracts, we don't know what we're going to have for the next year. So a 3-year contract would be something more appealing to us as a board, at least for myself. So something that we can plan on and figure on. So if there was a way to.
I think that would be our goal as we meet again next year, is to come up with a longer term contract. Again, the reason for this 1 year was because of COVID, because we were trying to be respectful of the fact that we might have LGA cuts, that there might be hardships coming our way that we had no idea were out there. So I do not believe the librarians at this point are willing to go back to the table and spread $20,000 over 3 years. I think that this is the contract we're looking at that was sanctioned by both sides of this negotiating committee for $20,000 increase and a 1-year contract. And then as we go into it next year, we'll look at those terms differently given the situation that we're in.
So what about 40,000 over 3 years?
I would have to talk to I can't make that decision on behalf of the 5 librarians total. I'd have to go back to my group, and you'd have to convince your group as well, because that's a big change from what they have currently in their budget as well.
But they probably won't want to look at that either, because
they meaning whom?
Well, you referred to your group that they have no desire to go back and negotiate. They figured on this contract here.
No. What I said was at one point we heard that there was someone on the board interested in spreading the $20,000 over a 3-year contract. And I know that at the time that this idea came up, the librarians of the group were not interested in that. But if you're saying a $20,000 1-year contract versus a $40,000 3-year contract, I can't make that decision on my own. I would have to talk to the rest of my colleagues, but that hasn't even been sanctioned by you as a group to offer me to go back and discuss with them. So, I mean, I'm happy to do that. I don't know if that is actually what you as a group want. Bob?
Well, this is public comment here, and there's no action to be taken anyway.
Right.
So this is it's not even on the agenda. So
No, we're just taking public comment, and it's getting kind of lengthy, and we have a lot of things to talk about.
But it's an important thing.
It is an important thing. Just from my perspective, it hasn't been a secret as far as the $20,000. It's already included in the current budget for 2022 on a 1-year basis. Next year, we can negotiate a 2 or 3-year contract. We'll still have to discuss the final budget when we get done, but from my perspective, it's the 20,000's already in there. And that's the way it stands right now. So
And
we appreciate your input.
I know.
Your public comment.
Very patient with me, Bob. I really just came here today because, again, it's the end of the year. We're all trying to wrap these up and to know what we're doing in 2022. when I heard that there were concerns about the current offer that's on the table, not something else, but this actual contract, I really just felt it would behoove us as librarians to come and to, like I said, talk about the process by which we got here, so it was clear for all of us. Talk about the history and the statistics that support this decision, and encourage you all to vote on it as part of your 2022 contract, and to let us know as soon as possible so we can plan our own years. So thank you so much. My email is H as in Houston, PUB as in public, LIB as in library @gmail.com. I'd be happy to answer any questions about library services or try to find those questions for you if you need more information besides what I've presented to you today. And thank you for your time. You know, we're all quite passionate about our jobs and about the services we provide for your citizens. And we hope that you will, like I said, do the right thing.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
So now we move on to the 9:30 public hearing to discuss the MS4 permit held by the county as required by the permit.
Was something that popped up on the screen. I don't know if there's another public comment who wanted to.
Oh, is there other public comment? I see these are just,
If there was something that had that Joey just.
I think she was the Caledonia librarian, so she might have been here for the.
just listening.
Oh, just checking in to make sure I behaved myself.
Okay. So let's have our public hearing to discuss MS4. Well, I don't know why I want to always say three. Backwards here. MS4 permit held by the county as required by the permit.
Morning, commissioners.
Morning.
So each year, so Houston County's been a MS4 permittee for about 2 decades. Historically, the county has had the public meeting jointly with the city of La Crescent. That has happened every year for the first about 15 years of having the permit. The last few years, through a variety of reasons, we just haven't had those joint meetings in La Crescent. Sometimes it's been missed or we weren't notified, and kind of feel it's a good time for us to have Houston County's meeting maybe separately from La Crescent. For a couple of reasons. One is that it is a requirement of the permit. It needs to be done annually. We can't miss it, puts us in violation of the permit requirements. And 2, it gives an opportunity for the board members and maybe additional public members, separate from the ones that attend the city's meeting, to have an opportunity to hear about Houston County's MS4 permit. So what it is municipalities and public agencies that have infrastructure within public settings has MS4 permits. So because City of La Crescent is part of the La Crosse MPO area, that pulls City of La Crescent, Houston County, and I believe La Crescent Township into each having their own MS4 permits. So for Houston County, what the permit applies to essentially is our road right of way and the hazardous waste or the solid waste drop site in La Crescent. That is all that the permit applies to from the county standpoint. So the city's permit would cover, the residences in the city's parks and the businesses throughout there. La Crescent Township would apply to the stuff that's outside the city limits, still within that larger urbanized area. So, like I said, as part of the permit requirements, we need to host a meeting annually to provide an opportunity for the public to learn more about our permit and provide comments on how we function. There is a new permit that got issued on November 16th, 2020. So there's a bunch of new requirements that we need to update different stuff within the county. So how we function might need to change some within the city of La Crescent. It could be some ordinance updates. We need to, make sure we do a good job responding to any type of any hazards or any issues that could affect the public water in the Crescent area. So, so Amelia's here today. Her and I have sat down and talked about the new permits. There's a variety of stuff that the county is going to need to do over the next year to come in fully into compliance with the permit requirements. Some of the stuff, part of the permit, but there's also county would be required to have stuff that addresses post-stormwater construction. And when you're just dealing with small aspects of, what does that really mean? Well, when you repave a roadway, that's basically all we have control over. There's limited areas for us to do stormwater construction stuff. So how do we address some of those issues? So I guess if you have any questions or want to hear more about the county permit, I can talk about it, or Amelia. Otherwise, if there's anyone on the public that wants to provide input, the biggest thing that I kind of hear about, and it's coming from the city more to the county, is with how we address different issues on the roadways. With during the winter, we put sand salt mixed onto our county roadways within the city. The city of La Crescent has gone to using just pure salt. That way they don't put sediment into the storm sewer, which dumps into the Mississippi. It's good in that aspect, but then you start putting more chlorides into the water, so it harms another aspect. So that's the one that I hear on my end a lot about the requirements. And from the county standpoint, for us to have just put a pure salt into that box in the truck to plow and put on 3 miles of roadway, go back to the shop, unload, reload with our sand mix. It's not very practical to do that. So,
Does the DNR have an issue with using that much salt? I mean, is there, because it goes into the Mississippi?
yes. So in our area of the state, no. There are issues with high chloride levels in different lakes around the state. Primarily it's in the Twin Cities area, but they're seeing more and more areas in outstate. So then you get into smart salting, and there has been training on smart salting, so you don't dump too much salt. So there's some concerns that way. Going to be more and more concerns on salt. At the same time, Pine Creek just recently got listed as an impaired waters for both turbidity and bacteria. Turbidity is from having too much sediment in that water in Pine Creek. Now, most of that dirty water is coming from Winona County, Watershed coming down in Houston County, some sites it's all in the rural area, draining in. So it's not a huge amount of dirty water getting into that stream from the creek from the Crescent area. A lot of it's from the rural area. But so at this point, major concern of salt in our area, no. Is it coming? Yes.
Because all that water dumps into like Blue Lake. It's not actually dumping into the Mississippi, it's dumping into backwaters.
There's enough flushing of water through that system at this point where it's not building up in the soils and in the vegetation in that waterway in that area at this time yet. So.
Pine Creek dumps into the south end of Blue Lake area there, south of 6114 Dike. Area there.
So is the Root River classified the same as Pine Creek as far as turbidity and
Root
it looks browner than Pine
Yeah.
Creek?
Do you know offhand?
That's
I believe
why they
Root
call it. That's why they call it the Root River. It's always been brown. It's always been brown.
Root River does have impairments. I don't know what it is offhand, but I would believe that it probably has for both turbidity and bacteria. But I'm not 100% sure on that.
So you say we should go forward with this permit or what?
It's a mandatory requirement. It's
To have a public
we don't
hearing.
have a choice to get out of it. We just need to have the annual opportunity for people to jump onto the meeting and speak on it. And I don't see anyone online today or here, which is basically what we've been finding within the city of La Crescent. I think in the 10 years or so I've gone to the La Crescent's meetings, I think there's only one time where one individual came to speak on their permit. Usually the number of people that show up for this aspect of the permit requirements is 0. So, but we do need to write that out for you.
I'll make a motion to pursue that permit MS4.
Well, this is just really a
Yeah,
public hearing
There's
part.
really no motion.
that we're
needed for
required to
anything.
have.
It's
We don't
just,
need
yeah,
to-
this is more to provide that opportunity today at a public setting.
I have a question. You commented to some things that need to be done in 2022 to satisfy this permit. Just briefly, what are some of the highlights that are kind of our shortfalls or concerns?
So there's some, when we get complaints, we need to document, the complaint, how we address that issue, make sure everything's documented. So, we can document verbal warnings. So there's some stuff like that, just general, making sure that everything's addressed when we get complaints. We need to have public outreach. So like the Houston County Recycler, when that goes out for different hazardous waste collection stuff, we might need to add 1 or 2 items into that. So we need to focus on 2 different items to focus on. So it could be, head waste cleanup or hazardous materials or whatever it is. We need to pick a focus to have. So right now the recycler talks about the hazardous waste collection day. We might need to add 1 additional item into that. You get into some ordinance changes potentially on how we address when there's new developments or post-construction type stuff associated with those construction projects. So some of that stuff, it hasn't really been a high priority for the county because our focus, our authority is just within our county roadways. So develops are taking place in someone else's MS4 area, not in our area. But by permit requirements, we need to make sure that nothing is leaving those developments and entering our right of way that doesn't meet permit requirements. So there's some stuff that it's going to, even though it's someone else's requirement, it pulls us in as well. Might involve some stuff with the drop site location as far as how the materials are managed and stored, and water getting into dumpsters that are running off and causing problems. So, and there's, it's a long list of items that we really do need to address. And some of the stuff is pretty quick and easy, and some of the stuff might be lengthy in ordinance changes and might not be feasible to address everything in 12 months.
This permit is good till 2025. And this is just a requirement to have a public hearing every year?
Every year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Once each annual year, it doesn't matter when.
okay. We're just fulfilling the requirement.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We'll move on from the public hearing to the consent agenda. There are quite a few items on here. There's 7 plus the 3 that I added earlier.
Mhm.
Any questions with regard to the consent agenda? I have one with regard to number 4.
That was the one I was going to ask too.
Right. Approval of the chief deputy sheriff's carrying over up to 80 hours of accrued vacation from 2021 to 2022. What's the reasoning on that?
The rationale is behind that, as you may recall, in the spring, we had a resignation of the emergency manager. So the chief deputy has been filling in for those duties until the recent assignment of the PSAP, Emergency Management Coordinator, as well as I understand he filled in some hours due to absences by other persons within the office, and so he was precluded from taking He did take some vacation, but not enough to lower his accruals. So in the past, we have to the level that can carry them forward. In the past, we've only approved these on the basis as if there was actually a legitimate basis to business need precluding the employee from being able to take the vacation they would have otherwise taken. He will be taking some vacation here in December and also some more in January. So we have a plan to lower those, but this includes the December time. And then, like I said, he has a plan to lower those accruals starting in January again.
Mhm.
Because they're allowed
And the
to,
sheriff is out right now as well. So I mean, there are a lot of demands on his time.
typically they're allowed to accrue up to 80 hours.
No, he's allowed to accrue up to 2 times his annual, per the union contract for May, 2 times his annual accruals. And employees accrue at different levels depending upon their time in service. So he is 80 hours over his accrual maximum for carry forward.
So this is a big allotment, then. This is a big, pretty substantial extension.
Well, we've done it, and we've done it in the past for a number of employees when there have been different, for instance, different emergencies that the county has faced and things where they are not, they're precluded by their supervisor and the demands on their job from leaving them and taking those vacation times, so.
Has this been, have you conferred this with VAPE? The union?
No, the sheriff, this has been a common, this is not an unusual request, this has been a practice we've scrutinized, but we have done in the past on numerous occasions. We just really scrutinize when we use it. Now it used to be more common practice than it is.
We've done this in the,
But you haven't discussed this with the union itself for what their thoughts on it are. And because it's a deviation of the contract there.
Well, it's consistent with past practice in the contract, so.
we've done this in the past where an employee has not been able to use their vacation due to unusual circumstances, as you had stated. And then, but technically we have to put it in that they can use it next year. Has to be approved as well. For this one as part of the consent agenda, but we did this a couple years ago for somebody in human services, I believe.
And we've done it.
that
in
could not
highway,
take off.
And we've done it in other places. I wouldn't bring it to you if we didn't have a plan for spin down starting right away in January, so we don't, there's plenty of time to make sure that this,
Mhm.
That's not a
that
reoccurring
it
thing.
doesn't just keep
Yeah,
accruing and
right.
accruing.
Most of the 80 hours came from the sheriff being off and covering for this guy that
Mhm.
quit. That's where most of the overtime came from, pretty much.
Well, it's not so much overtime as it is that, I mean,
It couldn't take
there
vacation.
was time, excessive time, I shouldn't say excessive, there was overtime. That the person, but he's an exempt employee, so he's typically not entitled to that overtime. But it was just a matter that he couldn't be away from,
Mhm.
couldn't leave.
Typically, is it that if you're reached the max, you just get paid out the time and a half?
It's use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it, okay, so they
Right.
don't get paid out.
No,
So rather than lose it, we're allowing them to have the extra 80 hours carry in the next year.
Only because it's the employer's demand that precluded him from taking that vacation time.
Mhm.
And the union has never made an issue out of prior practice.
No, they going against the interest of their own employee.
Right.
I can't speak for the union, but I would suspect that the union expects that their employees are allowed to take vacation.
Mhm.
That vacation cannot be arbitrarily or capriciously denied. Well, it wasn't arbitrarily nor capriciously denied. Therefore, we respectfully request this one time.
I guess what I see is if there's a plan for getting this work down, so this is not a reoccurring year after year, it's a one-time or occasional thing. I don't see any, as long as we got a plan for getting it downsized. And it sounds like there is one,
Yes.
starting in December and January.
It's been down in December, but there's also, I shouldn't say it's been down, but reduction of accruals. He will be able to take, I think it's 32 hours in December. On return of other staff and employees. And in January sometime as well.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda 1 through 7.
Well,
Plus the 3.
Plus the 3.
Okay.
Sorry about that. They were in front of me, so I guess.
Second,
Motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda, which would include the 3 additional items that we spoke of prior in the early part of the meeting. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Action items. Number 1, consider accepting a donation to the Veteran Services Office from the Brownsville VFW in the amount of $150.
I don't see any reason why not. It's to help them out. I'd move to authorize that accepting.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2, consider approval of the stipulated mediated settlement between AFSCME and Houston County regarding a labor contract grievance dated 10/1/21. Anything you need to tell us about this, Tess?
The Personnel Committee and of the board and I met with AFSCME with a representative from the Bureau of Mediation Services to see if we could bring closure to an outstanding grievance that we had as to the interpretation and application of an article in the contract. We did come to that, the agreement that is before you, and I recommend that the board approves it. AFSCME approved it last night. It was taken to their membership and they approved it last night.
Well, this was my first mediation and it went for 4.5 hours. But I think we came up with, rather than going into arbitration, which would have been the next step, came up with a solution that was agreeable to both parties. I'd make a motion to approve the mediated settlement. I think you all have copies of it.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the stipulated mediated settlement between AFSCME and Houston County regarding that labor contract agreements. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 3, consider approving the MFIP biennial service agreement 2022-2023. This is a required agreement for administration of the Minnesota Family Investment Program.
How about those Vikings?
They pull it out of their.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Mhm.
Thanks for confidence and sympathy.
See you in January.
So these two, I actually, item number 3, MFIP, and item number 4, the Title 4D cooperative agreement, are, as the agenda states, the required elements for us to do those programs. I brought Karen Kohlmeyer here today, who is our supervisor for financial assistance division in public health and human services, and she's going to go over each of those. Just give you, we've talked about these many times, but it's just I think a good thing to remind you of the scope of what we're doing.
Right, both of these agreements are biennial, so every 2 years we have to go
Mhm.
through these. The MFIP Consolidated Fund, it's the biennial service agreement. This is for 2022 and 2023. This helps us ensure that we're utilizing, so we receive allocations for our MFIP Consolidated Fund on an annual basis. So for 2022, our allocation is $188,585. So how we use this and what's required is this is to help families within the state. So we're looking at pregnant women, families with minor children, NCPs of children that are on MFIP that have income under 200%. We also allocate for emergency services. So, emergency assistance. So people have disconnects, addictions, that type of thing.
Mhm.
We have funding that's earmarked and allocated from the state to us to be able to service the clients we serve. And we do most of this work with WDI, Workforce Development Center. So
Mhm.
we contract with them to be able to look at employment services for the people we serve. They help with job search. They can help people get connected with Social Security, those type of things, so that we're in compliance with the program requirements.
One thing I add here is you'll be seeing the contract that we do annually with WPI for this very thing.
Mhm.
This is more of a biannual agreement with the state, assuring compliance with the things that we're supposed to do with. And that's one of the uses of that consolidated fund. So, next couple of weeks, you'll be seeing us come forward with that contract.
And the 2022 and 2023 budget are set the same. We don't know our allocation for 2023 at this point in time. And currently we are serving 54 families on the MFIP program. Through COVID, we did see that go up. The highest we had during this time was in October of 2020. I think that's correct. As far as timing of COVID, we all that time went so fast, but we are down to 53 families that are being served under this grant.
Mhm.
They've done things a little different, Bob, so I will be sending you an email with a link. When we do a printout, it kind of misses some of the ellipticals and things that need to be completed, so I'll get that to you. Who's that? Do you want me to talk about the cooperative, or do you have questions?
With regard to the MFIP, that 188,000. That's earmarked, but you said 54 families, 53 families. What if you don't serve as many as, is there a max and a minimum, or how does that?
No, we, most of this allocation does go to WDI. We contracted for $135,000 last year. And then there's administrative costs that come out of it. And then we have a separate line item for our emergency assistance funding.
WDI is,
Workforce Development
okay.
Incorporated. Yeah.
They provide employment training services across the 10-county region, southeast Minnesota.
So they take their, I'm not sure how they bill out, but they take that money and they separate it out. And it gets to the point where they can help people with different services if they need car insurance, gas.
I've heard about this because I am on that
Yes, if they
board
need
with the
clothing.
9 counties and.
Right, so if they're seeing a lot more, they can,
Mhm.
they do have to manage some of those support services.
Yes.
So,
The other thing I say is there's kind of 2 parts to this. If you're an MFIP client, there's a requirement for you to do some of these employment training services to presumably help you transition from that program to
Right.
employment. So that's part of the agreement that you make if you're receiving those
Right.
services. We as a county are obligated to provide that service for those clients who have that requirement. You know, that's what the WDI contract is all about.
Right.
I'd also say with WDI, this isn't the only work they do. They do a lot of dislocated worker things and other youth programming and things, but it's one of the larger contracts and agreements that we have.
Right.
So with regard to this, then, if there's a big influx of demand, does WDI covers it no matter what, or is there a back charge to Houston County to cover it more than anticipated?
They'll cover, like I said,
Okay.
they, you know, that's a
I guess
service.
that's what I was.
Yeah, they can't, you know, it's not like a.
No, we
you know, the
sign a
funding may
contract with them
Stop and we may,
for a certain amount.
they watch their budgets very closely, so they
Yes.
find that, you know, if somebody needs $60 in gas, they may not be able to provide that. So they watch their budgets very closely. on that side.
Every year through this biannual service agreement, the state looks at all of that data from all 87 counties, and that's helping determine what they're putting in this consolidated fund for employment services. So, and as Commissioner mentioned, you know, once we bring a contract forward, they have a not to exceed figure, then they need to bring some sort of significant need that we would then need to come to the board to have some sort of revision of that contract. And my time, we haven't had anything like that.
My question is this 188,000, how is that determined? Is that determined by size of the county or the needs thereof? You say 54 families or assisted in the last period of time. Does that make that number go up or down?
No, it's truly an allocation from the state.
Strict
Like, it
allocation.
does look at, you know, how many families you serve, the size of the county. It's, yeah, they send us, we received $5,000, approximately $5,000 more this year than we had last year. We're kind of holding that to look, as we all know, people couldn't be evicted. They couldn't be disconnected. So we want to be very mindful that if people meet guidelines for the emergency assistance program, if we need that, we have it. And we also know if we need to, we can work with WDI, so we're making sure we're not leaving money on the table. We want to utilize those funds to the fullest capacity.
But additionally, that's something that the state determines that allocation on an annual basis, even though we've got this biannual service agreement. Function or the parts of how this works is agreed to every 2 years. But then they will decide on an annual basis what the actual contributions can be.
And if we did contract with WDI or Workforce Development, we would have to provide this ourselves.
And we'd have to find another provider. They're
Yes.
very specific if
Right.
and we have years gone by, we did try to do that
I know.
internally, and it was a thoughtful idea, but we were out of compliance with what is
And they're very strict about following the
right,
compliance rules.
right.
I'll make a motion to approve the service agreement for
No, just three.
just 3 right now.
Motion made and seconded to approve the MFIP biennial service agreement for 2022-2023. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Then consider approving Title 4/D cooperative agreement, required agreement that addresses human services, county attorney and sheriff's offices roles in the child support program.
I'll make a motion to do that.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Further discussion. Did you want to tell us about this?
Basically, it's an agreement we need to have with the state. It's 2-part. The first part is between the county and the state, and the second part is between the county and the sheriff's department and the county attorney, basically saying we're going to follow the rules, policies, and implement the programs.
Does this deal with child placement
No, this is child support.
support?
Yeah.
It is closely associated with the previous program in that there's a significant portion of people who receive benefit who are also involved in child support and child support recovery. So is pursuing NCPs or non-custodial parents to be able to pay a portion of what it costs to support their family. And it goes throughout the court process. There's actual court orders. That's why the county attorney is involved, the sheriff is involved in serving the process for those individuals.
Further discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Yes, have to.
We will do too.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Action item number 5, consider approving the Natural Resources Block Grant Agreement with the Board of Water and Soil Resources for shoreland, SSTS, water plan, and wetland funds. Amelia.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good.
So I guess as it says, the Board of Water and Soil Resources handles all our shoreline money, our water plant money, and our wetlands money. And then they have an agreement in place with the MPCA, where the MPCA transferred the septic funds for just 1 year to them. And so this grant agreement will be for 2 years of Bowser programs and just 1 year of the MPCA program.
So this isn't anything different? It's just a 2-year instead of a 1 year?
Yeah, and I guess I'm not, I think the last one they signed was a 1 year for the septic program, and that they can only transfer money one year at a time as of right now, so that's why that one's a single year. But I believe the Bowser programs are normally signed in a biennial agreement.
Right.
And there's nothing that's really, excuse me, there's nothing that's really changed in this agreement? No new rules or requirements?
No, I guess they have nothing that's changed, I guess, from any other state agreement. It was a standard state agreement, I guess.
I guess it's just get it taken care of. I move to approve the grant agreement.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve the Natural Resources Block Grant Agreement with the Board of Water and Soil Resources for shoreland, SSTS, water plan, and wetland funds. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item. Thank you, Amelia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 6, consider approving change order request number 32 for additional curb and gutter on Washington Street, an additional curb and gutter near the transformer area, and reduction of concrete near the electrical transformer gas area.
So these are items, multiple items lumped into one change order request. This work has been completed out there, trying to get everything down here before winter. So the items up by Washington Street, what it was is that on the east side of the existing building, there was the curb head drops down, so it's a multiple curb head that went into our gravel parking area. The plan when the project got bid out did not have anything being done with that. So any water in the roadway, it wouldn't necessarily follow down that gutter line. It'll drain down the roadway, hit that point, and it'll drain off in toward our new building. So we wanted to put a standard 6-inch curb head in that area instead of leaving a driveway apron that goes to gravel or goes to grass once this project is done. Also on Washington Street, the water from History Lane would shoot across History Lane down our new driveway into the parking lot area and shooting right toward our doors into the new building. So the work on Washington Street also changed the slope a little bit on that roadway, so that water is going to drain. A lot of that water on History Lane will keep going down on Washington Street and not come down into the new building site area. And then down by the northeast corner of the new building, the original plan had pavement all the way up to the building, and well, pavement all the way up to sidewalk, right in front of that new building, so there's no green space area in front of that. There's a big electrical transformer and some gas infrastructure at that location. So you have pavement coming right to those pieces of equipment there that don't want to have vehicles hit or plow into. So what we ultimately discussed is putting curb and gutter in around that area, taking that sidewalk out. So there's additional cost for that curb and gutter and the reduction of the sidewalk in that area. So that's what's in this change order.
Net dollar.
And yep, so that net dollar is $5,934.54.
And this you've coordinated with the city of Caledonia as far as the,
Yep.
They didn't share any of the costs though.
Correct.
they are not?
No.
Yeah, no. We actually we approached Caledonia about, there's an area between two different patches on Washington Street. It'd be nice to pave that section in between. And they said, county wants to pave, but we can. They're not gonna contribute a penny to it. So he said no, so that area is left.
Okay.
So a motion to approve change order number 32.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded to approve change order number 32 for additional curb and gutter on Washington Street, additional curb near the transformer, and reduction of concrete near the transformer. Further discussion? Net change order of $5,934.54.
Mhm.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 7, consider change order number 25. This is revised for water and electric service for the pressure washer and wash bay at the new highway facility. Originally, number 25 material prices increased prior to board approval, and the price was not locked in and guaranteed. So
Yeah, so the previous change order 25, when it was approved at that point, the subcontractor had provided a quote to Weezer what they anticipated that work to be for. They didn't get the price locked in. They thought it was more of a, I guess I don't know the full details beyond, not knowing they were supposed to lock in that price right away. The material prices skyrocketed after that change order was approved, or between when they provided that quote and when it came to the board for approval. So ultimately the material cost went up by about $700 during that time. So this would be a revision. We told them, get that price locked in. We're not going to be doing a change order, come back for
Mhm.
another one because the price increased a third.
Get that ordered now after we get this approved, if we approve it.
Yeah, so if this is approved, everything's been ordered on hold, and their goal was to be ready to start installing it either later today or tomorrow.
that's the net amount of the change.
So keep that out, it's a little under $700, 600 and.
The price isn't, the dollar amount isn't the big issue. It's just a little annoying that
Mhm.
someone dropped the ball and didn't get that ordered, and we're ended up having to pay for it. But
Yeah,
I'm not going to squabble over $700, but
Somebody
I
dropped the ball.
absolutely agree with that. Yeah, the dollar amount difference is $654.45.
I'll make a motion. to-
700.
Motion made, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 8, consider approving change order request number 33 for additional insulation added to fill the void space between the roof sheets and insulation as specified at the new highway facility.
So this has been an item that's been on Weezer's list of stuff to bring back to the county once they had all the material finals total for several months. We talked about this back in early summer. So when the project got bid out, the overall shell of the building was bid in one package that was not completely designed. The building supplier designs up the building shell, all the insulation, everything else within the building was designed up and bid out. So when they bid the installation with the building, they knew the square footage of roof, what they had to have for R value in that area. You had the building walls, they knew all that stuff for bidding it out. But they didn't know the exact roof structure as far as the thickness of the beams and how everything was going to lay out within the structure itself. So there were some areas that between the roofing material and the bottom, kind of how the insulation all fit in there, that if they didn't put insulation in it, you'd have some different voids in some areas that they just didn't feel was a good design or a good construction standpoint to not fill those voids with insulation. So total what that amounted to was $8,080 worth of insulation material, no additional cost for it because they were up there installing insulation anyway. So it's just an additional material itself. So the change order request for $8,888.
So there was insulation going in along the roof.
Yeah.
This is just more insulation underneath it.
Correct. Yeah. So it does, increase overall, the efficiency of the building in a minor way.
To fill a void.
Yeah. So like I said, it came down to because of not knowing that structure design, whatever was bid out. And that's how things typically are done with metal buildings.
$8,000 is a pretty big void.
It is a pretty big, yeah. So the structure, goes from narrow on the one end, it gets wider as it goes down toward the outside edges. So, and it's a large roof area. They filled it.
So the insulators didn't realize that the beams, how they are designed, wasn't that part of the drawing when that building was blueprinted?
So when it was bid out, so that everything was bid out in December. The building design wasn't complete until I believe February or maybe March. So the building design wasn't actually complete until the structural components of the metal building for that roof frame wasn't designed until 2-3 months after the bid. They actually hired the company to design and provide that structure as part of that bid package.
How's it gonna come from? Is it coming out of contingency?
So this is within that contingency line item. So back on October 22nd, when we presented the line items with the different contingency items that went to date, change orders plus the remaining items. This was one of the items that was in that they had that remaining cost. So after this, at that time, it showed about 63,000, I believe, worth contingency remaining. They had about 7,000 for this. So it's a little bit higher than what their numbers were at that time, saying that everything added up, but it wasn't accounted for with the net remaining contingency that they provided.
Do we foresee any future change orders?
Yes, so as far as the list that was provided to me previously from the stuff that Weezer was aware of at that time, there was a $1,200 estimate for one more change order item. I don't know enough detail about that, and if it's really something that affects us or if it's a Weezer HSR engineering stuff that doesn't come back to the county. That is the only thing they had on their list of items that has not been approved up for change orders after today. Do I anticipate one more change order in the spring when they come back in to do the final paving and to address the disconnect of the existing buildings, utilities, yes. So, and the reason for that is that the existing building, water and sanitary service connection does not go out into the street straight out to the roadway from our building. When they went to install the water main loop, what they found is that our water line goes out to the curb stop, and then that location, it turns and starts going at an angle parallel line near the back of the curb. It actually starts going underneath the curb line. And the city is requiring that we terminate that line at the main, not at the curb, which is standard. You don't want to have extra line out there that's a dead line if you don't need it. So we don't know exactly where that's going to tie in and how much it's going to be for finding that end, getting it in there, and then patching that roadway, and then getting that entrance all put back together. So I do anticipate that. Besides for that, I don't foresee anything else at this time.
Just wondering if we were gonna run out of contingency fund.
I sure hope not.
Well, no, if we do, that's it. Just, we gotta remember that.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, at this point, so later on today, this afternoon, we're going to do a building walkthrough to do the final punch list items. So we're getting near the end where, they're literally looking at, what's in the plan that's not complete. Let's get that final list. So everything except for, just these few outstanding items that'll be done next spring is complete. So
I was planning on trying to go to that, but I can't do it. So I apologize for that.
I guess move to authorize change order number 33 as listed.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve the change order request 33 for the additional insulation to fill the void space. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That takes care of all the action items. I do have a couple questions for Brian. One, do we got a price yet as far as running an electrical service to the sheriff's impound building?
Not full price, but what I have been told is, so the city for service to a shed like this, city provides the service going from the power pole over to the first 200 feet. So I believe where we'll be connecting to the shed is probably within 200 feet. So the city would provide that. If the line is buried, the county would have to, hire someone or dig the trench for the line. I believe it would probably be overhead to serve from the pole over to that building. So really that cost should be covered. There would be the meter cost. I guess I didn't get confirmation that the city provides that meter if we need to buy the meter. Within the sheriff's shed, as part of our design packs for a new highway building, the connection to that from that new power line into the shed, that I actually believe that they need to provide the meter there within that building, so that'd be covered as well. So then it gets into the circuit panel and any wiring within the sheriff's shed that would not be covered by anything at this point. That would have to be bid out and added. Depending on if they wanted to have 1 or 2 outlets or 50 outlets and a couple lights versus many lights. So should be fairly minimal cost once we know what they're looking for. I have to try to get that cost finalized. But overall, getting that power over to it should be no cost.
Overhead line overhead ain't gonna bother nothing down there, is it, for owners or anything like that?
No, overhead should be fine as long as, I think overhead should be fine as long as you install it high enough where you don't need to worry about it.
The city will pay for that. That's, I've got two.
First 200 feet.
Second question I've got is with regard to this Chase Work bicycle rally business. And I don't know if any of you have seen this, but he wants to have a bike rally that starts at the fairgrounds and goes out County Highway 3 one aspect of it. One part of it is in town, and then there's another one that goes out 3 down 24 to Freeburg and back on 249. You got any problem with that?
I don't. So we have, several different bike events. Some of them are more races. Some of those are more bike rides. There's a triathlon that goes from Houston over to Mount Prairie and back each year. They bike on their roadway there. Up in the Crescent area, a lot of the ones go partway in Houston County, partway in Winona County. Usually they go real well. We don't have any issues. The biggest thing usually becomes, are there any, what's that pavement condition? Do we have any construction projects going on at that time? We don't have those. So really, I think it'll be good to have that to come to that area.
So there's no, I mean, I look at the routes and there's no shoulder like on County 3 that goes out. So they're riding on the
They ride on the
driveway.
road. Yep. And it is allowed. Bikes can go on the roadway and that driveway legally. They ask that, right turn has the right of way. Well, right turn always has the right of way. So there's no issues there. You would have a couple, for a bike race, when you get to the stop sign at like in Freeburg where 24 comes into 249, those bicyclists are going to want to drive straight through that stop sign. But 249 takes that sharp left turn, vehicles slow down to 25, will have someone at that intersection anyway, with the best on direct traffic. Same thing as you come into Caledonia on going from 249 onto 25 and up onto 3, they'll have people at those intersections.
So they'll provide,
They said they would
Traffic
provide
control.
everything as far as traffic control. Might want to have the sheriff's office provide a little bit of assistance if they're available, of which they might be able to do that. As long as they provide all that stuff, historically we haven't charged for that. When we get into providing message boards and other stuff, we've charged a little bit. A lot of times we can provide that at no cost because it is a benefit to the community of bringing in people from outside the area.
I just
That's
wanted
this
to-
next summer.
Yeah, if they're looking at this next summer, they have not set a date yet. They're gonna provide the permit application along with, a roadmap and the $20 permit fee to me here in the next week or two, from what I can tell.
Eric?
So you're gonna have the sweeper out there to sweep the loose gravel off the pavement and all that?
Yeah, so we usually put the sweeper out there a couple days in advance, or maybe that Friday before. We always recommend that they get there, within that week in advance, drive it themselves. So that way, if they see anything, they're aware of it. If it's something minor that's dealing with, sand on the roadway, we try to sweep it off, so we can get someone out there. If it's something, bigger item, due to, just overall pavement condition, once we tell them, that's just what it is. We're not gonna go out there and do major infrastructure work for roadway conditions. But yeah, so we'll try to put a sweeper out there that Thursday or Friday beforehand. And what we usually do is just go to the intersections and any sharp curves that bicyclist would potentially fall on.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, Bob, I didn't hear what is this called?
It's a bike rally.
Bike rally, I think it's partnered with U of M,
Right.
cycling team or something. They're looking at potentially about 300 individuals coming to the Caledonia area for that one-day event on a Saturday.
Okay.
There's various aspects. There's a short one, there's a longer one, and then there's a real long one.
For our tourism.
Yep, they want to have, these will be, after time trial, and they need to be registered at, with their ICU group or their cycling union, or unit is, they need to be registered with.
And as I understood it, they don't send them all at the same time. They space them.
Yep.
So we don't have a gaggle of bikes riding down the highway side by side. Okay.
Do we have any, do you have any appointments for Eric and I to view that County 3 area?
I don't, I met with, so I don't know if I filled you in fully at the last meeting I had. So on County 3, outside of Brownsville, there's a request to vacate some county right away.
Mhm.
If we vacate that portion right away, it amounts to about 1/3 of an acre, give or take. If that happens, that land goes to a different landowner,
Mhm,
which would then have to take that property, if they want to use it to build it with conjunction of
mhm.
the existing parcel outside the right of way, and then they, do a land swap there.
Okay,
I don't want to rush the process where the county potentially vacates a third of an acre of land, gives it to someone that doesn't have a need for that land, or doesn't want that land back for some reason, and then create a different headache. So,
right.
I met with that
Okay.
landowner individually,
Okay.
and he was gonna look at that,
Okay,
think about some stuff, and get back to me, either this week, or if he doesn't,
Okay.
just get a hold of him. So
Okay.
it's kind of being delayed a little bit just because we want to make sure that third parties.
okay, sounds good.
Okay. Now, before you leave, one thing you mentioned is you want to go out and see the building and whatnot. And you got a 1 o'clock appointment. We also have a 1 o'clock appointment with the joint county collaborative
Mhm.
between Fillmore and Houston County. I don't know who's going to be able to go to that. I can't. I got an appointment in Rochester.
I'm going to that.
Well, it's on WebEx, so yeah.
It's on WebEx, but just a reminder that we do have that for at least some of our people to be there.
Right, that's,
Show up one time.
Do we
that's why,
have a appointment?
I have a
That's why
1:30
you
appointment.
can't be there.
yeah, that's why I can't make it today, Brian, is because of that meeting, so.
Thanks for the reminder, commissioners. I was going to mention that. So
Mhm.
All right. Well, I wanted to mention. Thank you, Brian.
So how many do we need to be at that Fillmore County Board?
It has to be a total, a majority of the 10 of us. So right now we got 3 of us that will be there.
If they have all
So,
five.
and if they have all 5 of theirs,
Yeah.
we're fine. They only need 3. We have to have a majority.
I can still go down and look at that instead.
I would think so.
If we got 3 going to the Fillmore County and you're not there and I'm not there, we still have a quorum.
Yep.
Mhm.
You could go to that, Greg.
Okay, as long as you're going on Loveland, I'll go there.
Okay.
So then we'll move on to board updates. The board updates with regard, we had a finance committee meeting this morning and discussed that. Carol's here. If we make the changes that we talked about with the 3% that we've proposed and the changes that we've talked about, we make it fits as far as the budget is concerned without having to use any of our fund balance, general fund balance.
Okay.
We've made enough cuts, and I'm anticipating additional cuts on the east steps. I'd like to use COVID money, or not COVID, ARPA money for the east steps, that $50,000 or so, because it is a public safety
Mhm.
item that would qualify for that. And I'm also going to recommend that we would use some of the ARPA money for a ditching project on County Highway 10 down before you get to Sheldon. One that has had an issue in the past, that we could use ARPA money for the waterway, because I mean, that's one of the things that it's designated, and try and resolve that issue on County Highway 10 using the ARPA money.
Okay. Speaking of ARPA money, I also, and along with Allison, checked out SEMCAC. The money that they are getting can only be used for housing and heat for people who, housing situations. So they are still looking for ARPA money from us for some of their building projects. I think you mentioned the food shelf in Caledonia, et cetera.
I think we should reconsider setback.
Right.
Yeah, so,
The door access and the
Right.
handicap accessibility.
yes,
part. I
exactly.
don't think we want to do carpet,
No,
but, okay. So we'll reconsider that.
okay.
One other thing I want to bring up is that I had a call from Paul Frichte this morning with regard to Crooked Creek Watershed. And they have paid everything off on that project down there, but they've got change orders and additional bills coming in that amounts to, say someplace in the neighborhood of $40,000 that at the present time they don't have, but the bills are there. And was wondering if because this is a project that deals with water and with runoff and whatnot, and we've talked about putting some of the ARPA money to the watersheds and to the water drainage controls, if we could forward or do some of that in 2021 instead of waiting to 22. So
In
that those
advance.
backup funds- You get in advance. It's not in advance, just pay it in 21 instead of 22. They said I'd mention it to the board, but I would hope that we could do something like that.
I think we should do that.
We should put that on the agenda for next time.
The next meeting, right?
Exactly. Yep, that makes sense. That's,
So we want to get.
Can you send me a request with the dollar amount?
Sure. Do we want to do the 40-50 or do we want to do the 400 like we have we talked about? Or do you want to
Well, just for this year, let's just do the 40. Then we can talk about the rest of it.
Mhm.
Once we figure out how that's gonna work, if there's not actual watersheds, you know,
Mhm.
how that's gonna work.
Okay.
And the other thing, I'll do my report too. I had a smart trails meeting with regard to southeast Minnesota, the trails and whatnot. You know, it's interesting to sit at that meeting because you go to Rochester and you go out in western Minnesota and they got money floating out, trails and whatnot up the kazoo. I said, you know, the people from La Crescent have talked to them, but it's just the infancy of the project to get from La Crescent to Houston. So I got to talk to Bill Waller because we need to get moving faster on that to get some of this money, especially since the state is getting all this money from the feds. Get our name in there for some of these, you know, the development, the land acquisition and whatnot to get that put together. The right of way, using right of way or however the, you know, the trail's gonna go and then up the river, however it's gonna go, or if it's going up the county highway and over, up to Mount Prairie and then across. You know,
Mhm.
finding a route.
The city of La Crescent, Houston County EDA, City of Houston, and City of Polka have had some preliminary meetings.
Okay.
And we did meet with the DNR.
Yeah.
Certainly, yes, you can reach out to Bill. There will be a lot of barriers with the project because there's new rules regarding like the grade and the slope for handicap accessibility and the potential trail. Regardless of where you go, most likely would go through a wetland, in which case we're gonna run into some issues there. So it is on the radar, and yes, certainly still reach out to him, and yes, it would be good to get some of that funding, but there's a lot of.
This is 2 or 3, 4 years down the road type of a deal, but you need to get their ducks in a row so that the funding is made available.
Do we have like the land all purchased for this like too?
No.
We're in the early stages then.
we're still in the thinking stages, not even the planning.
Mhm.
Keep me posted if we get to go across it.
I mean, now that other trail is going in, connecting La Crosse to La Crescent, yes, we absolutely, from an EDA perspective, wanna keep those people in Houston County and give them additional places to ride. So that's like the next phase, I think. For La Crescent, I think it's fair to say that, but,
How's our four-wheeler trail coming down there? That four-wheel deal they try to get down.
I have no idea how the off-highway vehicle deal in Houston is doing. That's Eric's district, so.
Yeah.
let's
How's
go.
that going down there?
I haven't heard anything lately.
That's the extent of my report. Who wants to go?
I guess I'll start it out. Not much else going on. I did attend the city meeting last night. A bit of good news, in my opinion, is that they are gonna go back to 5-day-a-week operation in their building. So that'll kind of relieve a little pressure off our license bureau perhaps up here. But they're gonna be 7:30 to 4 daily, Monday through Friday. Talked about the wagon wheel project. They'll be setting the beams. The engineer was there last night. They're way ahead of schedule. They're doing great. They plan on setting the beams in May. So that would be the crowning part of that wagon wheel project. Other than that, it's mostly just local stuff going on, redoing Walnut Street and there's in the plan and that's about it.
Thank you.
I mainly last week I had negotiations and mediation. Took a lot of time last week. I already brought up about SEMCAC. So I am the meeting this afternoon. That's it.
I'm next. Well, I guess we had a finance meeting this morning. Everything went pretty good there. I didn't get there till I was maybe a little late, but it went pretty good. Guess I was wondering if, like, for the library lady, if we could use our ARPA money to buy computers and fix some of their buildings up.
For what?
To purchase computers with our ARPA money for the library. We got such old computers. IT stuff, to replace that for them with ARPA money.
I don't know.
We'd have to research that, I think, and see.
There'll be several libraries involved.
All of them.
Yep.
What you heard there was of all the things they would want to do, it was going to be like 160,000, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So they, they know that's probably not realistic, so they backed it off. But I just want to clarify one thing. I didn't mean to say, Bob, that it was a secret. What I was trying to say is that I know you had that meeting with the townships, and then we didn't hear nothing about what was going to go on until I think I brought it up at a meeting, wondering what became of everything. And there was the assumption that the townships were going to kick in on their levy to help pay for that, and obviously that turned out not to be accurate. So there's lies the confusion. I wasn't trying to insinuate there was a secret. It was just that, and I didn't realize, and probably for my own fault, that I didn't read it, but that was already in the budget, which we haven't really voted on yet either, I don't
No.
think.
We do that at the end of December.
In December.
And so I've been thinking about this a lot the last few days, and I would like to see us have a 2 or 3 year deal. A 3 year deal would be better just for planning purposes, so we know where we're at. We don't have to sit there and negotiate year after year on this situation, where we have something planned out. And that's where I came up this morning. It probably threw you all for a loop about the 40,000 over 3 instead of doing 20 every year, because we know that's where it's going to go. So that's why I threw that out there.
Well, I'll apologize for not properly explaining the process as far as where the 20,000 and letting it,
Because I
making
misunderstood
it sound
that
like
too.
there was a levy for the townships instead of coming through the.
No, it was I misunderstood it too, and then the townships do get.
I'm gonna say that for one second, the townships are gonna pay the 20 until today. Now I know we are, so I mean, it's no big deal.
No,
And it'll be
the
a set.
townships in Brownsville and Eichton are paying it, but it's through the county, not through their own individual levies.
Right.
I didn't explain it properly, but they do pay it.
Yeah.
It does come through their
It
taxes.
just comes through us, is all.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm sorry for that. What else you got, Eric?
Oh, I just had negotiations last week too, and mediation, and I don't have anything new to add. We had that highway meeting last Friday. The biggest holdup now is our service doors for the shop, and it's getting a little frustrating. They need those doors, especially when the cold weather comes here. They got some blankets up now, but we're just being held up on hardware for them doors to get them put together. And now it sounds like maybe December 15th.
Oh my.
Yeah, so it's rather frustrating because if we get those doors in, and we'd be ready to start moving stuff around and get going here. But what do you do when we can't change the order? We can't, find different doors because it's the same situation there too. There's just no hardware. The panels are there, but the hardware's not there. They're probably sitting on some boat there in California coast. So
Mhm.
Yep.
Just too bad we didn't build that thing 5 feet up in the air a little bit more. Brought the whole shop up 5 feet instead of being down in that little hole like we are. If we could have brought that up another 5 feet, sure would have been nice. We wouldn't be doing all this re-guttering. That's a hearsay now. I mean, that's too late.
Mhm.
That could change.
Yeah.
It's just too bad we maybe weren't thinking that we should have had that building up in the air a little more, but that's not up to us. That's an architect's.
That's the engineer, yeah.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything?
I think once the old one comes down and we can reshape it there, it won't be as obvious.
Mhm. I really like your reports that you send us, Eric, too.
Those are
The weekly one.
Weezer's put those together, so.
No,
It's nice. It's good
I
reading.
really like it, yes.
Keep updated.
Mhm.
One more meeting, and then if we're gonna have any more, we're gonna have one more for sure, maybe not, depends on how
Won't be
long.
until spring when they finalize. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll call for public comment. Don't see any. I see all county employees on the screen and no public here.
I think the one public comment made up for the last one here too, so.
There wasn't a 5-minute limit, that's.
No. Never mind.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-mm. Doesn't work.
So if there's nothing else, we'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Further discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Sorry, did it again, Eric, sorry. Those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.